All right, friends, let's talk Amazon S3. So if you are storing your photos in some sort of cloud storage solution like S3, maybe, a lot of people do this, even if you're not using a serverless solution. This is something a lot of people do. So let's talk about that and how that fits into Livewire file uploads. So let's see. Actually, I'm going to shoot from the hip here. Well, first I'm going to actually assume that you have S3 configured. So if you go to filesystems.php, this S3 driver here, where is it? S3 uses all of these keys. It has your AWS key, the bucket that you want to use, all this stuff. Go to the Laravel docs to actually configure S3. So I'm going to assume that you have it configured because you're using it in your app. If you don't, it's really easy with Laravel. You install this League file systems AWS package, and then you basically just configure your keys that you get from Amazon. So I'm going to assume that you have already done that. And now I'm actually wondering, maybe I wasn't prepared for this, but let's try it. I think our goal here right now is just going to be, instead of storing it locally in our little avatars thing, what if we, is this even going to work? Let's just try it, whatever. We'll get into a mess. What if we set when we do arrow store to actually store the temporary file, what if we store it in an S3 bucket? So maybe we'll try that. So this is our S3 bucket. And let's say that avatar's driver is now S3. And I wonder if this is just going to work. See, this is kind of interesting. Maybe we need to copy all of this stuff, we probably do need to do that. Yeah, so let's do that. Let's paste in all of this and then get rid of this. Okay. And now I'm crossing my fingers here. Hopefully we can just store it. Hopefully we can just upload the file and it shows up magically. We might get an error, but I don't know, whatever. Let's just try it. All right. We're already getting an error because we're generating a URL from S3 for a file that doesn't exist. But let's try this. So let's do, again, this is the massive advantage of using disks is we can change heavy stuff like this and not have to change anything. Oh, I'm so nervous. What's going to happen? Okay, I select that. Check it out. Temporary file. Whew. Wow, that just worked. So we look at this image. It doesn't show it because it cleared it. Let's try a different one. Let's upload this here. Upload. And bam, look where this is coming from. Oh, it's still coming from preview file. Oh, right. Okay, forget I'm saying this. I'm overly excited. We haven't done any of that yet. Oh, you're so confused. You're not going to be in a second though. Look at S3, refresh S3, and we didn't hit save yet. I'm a complete idiot. Save. New avatar must be a file type PDF. Why did we do that? Okay. You're with me. You're in the fray. We don't want that. We want it to be an image. Okay. Now let's try this again. Save. Ooh, it's saved. Now let's refresh S3 and see if in our S3 bucket we have, there it is. Check it out. There's our new file. That's it. Stored right there. And that's that. And now if we refresh, we should be getting a URL from S3. Let's take a look at that. If we look at this in the HTML, look at that, Livewire test, that's my S3 bucket, and it is pulling directly from S3. Okay, so now we're totally using S3 for our image uploads, but the temporary uploads, so remember how Livewire uses sideloading. When you do an upload, it's going to actually sideload the image to your server until you store it. Right now, we're only storing it on S3. We haven't configured Livewire to store the temporary files on S3. So again, to reiterate, inside of storage, app, Livewire temp, these are all those files right there. They're building up still. So if you're using Laravel Vapor, this is kind of a non-option. And there's a whole, Taylor has already released this Vapor JavaScript package for uploading files directly to S3. Well, Livewire does all of that for you, so you don't actually need that. It totally works with S3. Let's configure it. First, we're going to need to publish Livewire's configuration. We haven't done that at all, which is kind of hilarious that we haven't needed to do that yet. I'm pretty anti-config when, or I guess I'm pretty much my belief is, use the best, most sensible defaults you possibly can, and then provide configuration further. So I generally don't ever need to publish the config files. This is funny. We're doing this for the first time. PHP artisan vendor publish tag Livewire config. You can go to Livewire's installation docs to find that. Okay, so now we've published this config.livewire.php. So in our app, if we go to config livewire.php, here's your Livewire configuration. There's a bunch of configuration here that generally you don't need, but a few people do sometimes. Well, I added this whole new configuration section, Livewire temporary file uploads endpoint configuration. It explains all the details. Livewire handles file uploads by storing uploads in a temporary directory before the file is validated and stored permanently. So remember I mentioned this in the last video that there's some validation defaults for the temporary file upload. You can customize those here. You can use any validation rules you want for that temporary file upload. You can make the maximum bigger if you want to support bigger file uploads. Directory, the default is Livewire temp, but you could set it to temp if you wanted. And then middleware, I default to throttling, but you could change the throttle. You could set your own middleware, whatever you want to do. But here's the sauce that we're looking at. This disk right here, it's set to local as the default. We want to set it to S3. So if we set the disk to S3, and now let's take a look at these network requests. Get ready. So here is our network. We are going to choose a file. It's going to be this headshot. Okay, choose it. All right, so now we show this new headshot. So this image is pulling directly from S3. So this temporary preview is a signed preview URL. Remember, we didn't even store this. And if we refresh this bucket, take a look at the files now. Now there's a Livewire temp folder, okay, that has our temporary file that is not stored yet. And if we take a look at the AJAX request that happened, the first one, remember, we're sending to the component. The second one, we're actually doing the file upload. This file upload is going directly to Amazon S3. It's never even touching our servers. So you could keep that, you could basically keep all files off your server if you wanted using this technique, which is pretty fantastic if you ask me. So it works beautifully with Amazon S3. Okay, so here's another little point. I've added a new artisan command. So there's no way for me to automatically configure your S3 bucket folder, this Livewire test directory. There's no way for me to automatically configure it to clean up after itself after files older than a day. So I've created a command that you can run on an environment that uses that S3 bucket called artisan, artisan Livewire configure S3 upload cleanup. So right now, these files will just build up forever and they'll stay there forever and you'll end up paying for it in S3 fees. You don't want to do that. So you run artisan Livewire configure S3 upload cleanup, and it will configure this for you. So let's see if I can show you how this works here. So inside of, I'm an S3 noob. This is like, I'm not really into all this stuff. Where is it? It is object level logging. No, this is freaking funny. You are watching how I use S3 or how I use AWS in general. Okay, so here we go. Oh, it actually already has one. Let's see if I can delete this rule. Okay. So in management lifecycle rules are where you could actually create a rule to automatically clean up old files in a specific folder. We run this, and Livewire temporary S3 upload directory Livewire temp set to automatically clean up files older than 24 hours. Now if we refresh, we're going to see that lifecycle re-added because I added it before it existed before. So there we go. Applied to Livewire temp, actions for current version expire. So there you go. This is everything. Yeah, I mean, this is it. This is the stuff. By the way, forget what I was just about to say. This works great. I mean, I feel like I want to keep talking because I'm so excited about this S3 stuff, because if you're using Laravel Vapor, this all just works for you. It just works, like it's just done. Yeah, so this is totally Vapor compatible. It's totally S3 compatible. Maybe I'll mention one more kind of deeper thing. So notice that, let's take a look at, we're going to go deep here for a second, okay? So I'm going to upload a file to S3. It's going to be this file. Oh, I shouldn't show other people's faces, should I? It's going to be this file. All right, I upload. And now notice the first request is to the component. It's really quick. This is just to our Livewire component. The second request actually uploads to S3. That's much slower because it's an actual upload. In reality, you're dealing with files much bigger than 30 kilobytes, so it's going to be even slower. Then the next request goes back to the component. Now notice that in our component, if we just type something, like I type a letter in here, we do a request, that request was really quick. Like clearly it didn't reach out to S3, right? But at any time, I can say this arrow new avatar arrow get, and it'll get all the contents from S3, right? Now notice when I actually validate a file, let's say I change this validation to be like 10 kilobytes again, it's going to be a little bit slower. So if I go and change this file to something that's going to violate, actually this will just violate the, oh shoot, okay. Let's change this, and now I'm going to hit save, okay? And we get validation. Notice that request took much longer, because to validate the file, I actually have to go out to S3 and figure out what the file size is so that we can validate it. This arrow new avatar, this is just it's a lazy remote uploaded file. So this doesn't actually touch S3 until you ask it to, until we say store, or until even store actually doesn't touch S3 depending on how you use it. No, it does, forget that. Anytime you're calling get size, anytime you're getting the contents of the file when it's on S3, then of course you have to make the request to S3. But I didn't want to bog down the whole component by basically always getting this file from S3 when I hydrate this component. So I don't know if you're even following this, but the point is that when you deal with the file, it's going to be a slower request because you have to go to S3. But the nice news is that it's a lazy file. So it basically never touches S3 unless you explicitly tell it to. There is Livewire file uploads in S3. I hope you dig it. Thanks for following along. I think in the next video, I'm going to show you how to upload multiple files, and then we'll get into so many other things. Okay, see you in the next video.